And as you know, our theme this month is Living the Science of Mind. And today's topic is in the driver's seat, which you already know about because in Gail's affirmation, she addressed that. So that was not coincidence. We actually planned that. She had that set up, having known what the topic was going to be. So, you know, in the driver's seat is the place that most of us really want to be, even though we're temporarily sometimes a passenger in the vehicle of life. And that's the discussion for today. Who's in charge of me, and where am I going? This is in keeping with our series of topics this month on the basics of the science of mind, which, as all of you know, is from the first 4 chapters of the text. In week 1, we reminded ourselves that there is one mind, that mind is God's mind, and that mind is operating in and through each one of us, always. Dr. Holmes called that the thing itself, and though we sometimes tend to forget it, we remembered that there is a divine nature within each one of us, and each of us gives it permission to express through us. We talked about the fact that this divine nature is always present in us. It's always available for us to use, and that our use of it is what enables us in our thoughts, in our ideas, in our intentions, and in our actions to be free to be ourselves. Then last week, we explored how this principle works. And for those of you who were there, you'll remember that we likened that to how much can we take of good, of pain, of joy, of grief, of progress, however much I choose to accept, well, that's what I get in my life. And we reminded ourselves that life is like that we come into this plane of expression, that is, we pop into the world through the experience of birth, with all the parts and all the directions, but not necessarily everything in place. Our challenge, our purpose is to build on our consciousness, to expand and enhance our awareness, to see ourselves transforming the bits and pieces into what it is we're capable of being. That's the way it works in us. Which brings us to today, now ready to address the 3rd chapter in the Science of Mind text, titled, What It Does. And I want to bring you some interesting examples of folks, quote, in the driver's seat. This is the story of a pilot of a commercial airliner who was on his way to a major city in one of the a major airport, I should say, in one of the country's largest cities. Suddenly his radio crackled and an air traffic control voice paged him saying, TWA 2341, for noise abatement, turn right 45 degrees. Well, obviously annoyed, the pilot snapped back, traffic control, we're at 35,000 feet. How much noise can we make up there? Ground control responded in a quiet voice, Sir, have you ever heard the noise a 747 makes when it hits a 727? So even though when we're in the driver's seat, we have to occasionally pay attention to the sights and the messages around us, like 747s coming straight at us. In the 3rd chapter of the Science of Mind text, I saw Beth's face light up. Oh, I get it. In the 3rd chapter of the Science of Mind text, Dr. Holmes talks about what the principle of life, divine mind as we know it, really does. He reminds us that it's no secret, but in order for it to be revealed, it has to have an outlet. Well, bingo, that's you. That's me. It's the person sitting next to you. It's all of those of us who recognize it and those of us who don't. But it can only give to us what we can take, as we discussed last week. And it can only give to us what we see, what we understand, what we accept. Because this universal life force personifies itself through humankind in varying degrees, according to each person's receptivity to it. We're surrounded by a mind or intelligence that knows everything, and the potential knowledge of all things exists in this mind. And we also exist in it and draw from it. But what we draw from it, we must draw through the channel of our own minds. So you see, the principle is really very simple. It's the nature of the universe to give us what we are willing to accept. Spiritual wisdom says that God, Spirit, divine energy, manifests through everything. The mechanical laws of nature are set and immutable, but our spontaneous recognition of these laws gives us the power to bring them into practical use in our everyday lives and experiences. That's what living life is all about. Choice, volition, conscious action. The laws of the universe are to be trusted, but we must come to understand them in order to use them. But like the pilot being contacted by the air traffic controller, even when we're in the driver's seat, we need to be paying attention to what's going on around us, because it's a reflection of what's happening within us. Here's another little vignette with food for thought in that regard. A DC-10 airplane had come in what's designated as hot for a landing, as they say in the aircraft industry, and consequently had an exceedingly long rollout after touchdown. If you've ever been a passenger on an airliner when this happened, you have a sense of what I'm talking about here. In any event, as the plane streaked down the runway at San Jose Municipal Airport, the ground controller in the tower contacted the pilot.
Power on. Bluetooth pairing.
Contacted the pilot saying, American 751, make a hard right at the end of the runway if you are able. If you are not able, take the Guadalupe exit off Highway 101, make a right turn at the traffic signal, and return to the airport. So, how often do we just streak right on past the supportive choices open to us and go careening off into untested ground? How often do we frantically search for an excuse or a list of excuses that will somehow justify that we missed the off-ramp because actually we weren't really paying attention? Pedestrians stepped into the street off the curb without looking first and was knocked down by a passing bicyclist. Boy, were you lucky, said the cyclist as he picked himself and his bike up. Lucky, screamed the pedestrian as he, too, struggled to his feet. He said, what are you talking about? That really hurt. You were very lucky, repeated the bicycle rider. Usually I drive a bus. So you see, making excuses, while sometimes rather humorous to the listener or the onlooker, can really keep us from our good. Our task as we go through this incredible experience called humanness is to make conscious choices and take conscious actions to learn. And in this spiritual community, you can do that right here, right now. This spiritual center is available to us every day, not just on Sunday mornings. And while we don't give lessons in how to drive a car, steer a bicycle, or fly a plane, this philosophy is designed to support you and to guide you in learning ways to live your life better, to expand your understanding of how universal laws work for you, or why it seems like they've been working against you. Our current class, Foundations, on Tuesday afternoons, and our class, Spiritual Mysticism, on Thursday evenings, are such opportunities to get very clear on how the philosophy of the science of mind really works in life. It's incredibly doable when we understand what the opportunities are and how we get to use them. Here's still another way that you can move into the driver's seat in your life. In religious science, we have what are called practitioners, as all of you are aware of. And these are people who are licensed in the art and science of affirmative prayer. On Sunday, if you choose, you can take advantage of that. You can use me as your practitioner when and if you choose, or I can refer you to licensed practitioners on the mainland. You can go online to CSL.org and look up the Ministry of Prayer. You can read treatments in the Science of Mind textbook and others of Dr. Holmes' writings. They're interspersed in all of his writings. In his 2 chapters on physical perfection in the Science of Mind text, there are numerous sample treatments that you can adapt to your own intention. In fact, all of Holmes' writings, you find these spiritual mind treatments to use as guidelines to your words and your specific conditions. It's not about reading his verbatim, because that's single-dimensional. But as you read through his treatments, you pick up the flow and the use of words, and then you can use that for your own intention and your own affirmative direction. And also, to support all of these activities, you can buy books and magazines that explore the principles of science of mind, of conscious living, of spiritual unfoldment. We can order those books for you whenever you ask. You can buy them online in hard copy. You can download ebooks and audios. We're so fortunate in today's world that there are no reasons for being uninformed. And I want to share with you that on Wednesday, January 30th, the season for nonviolence begins. And during its 64 days, culminating on April 4th, we have numerous opportunities to see how the science of mind can be practiced in real time by acknowledging the universal connections between all spiritual beings having this human experience. So if you choose, you can go to the website www.agnt.org, and that's the Affiliated Global New Thought Network. Many of you are familiar with that, and that's an easy website to remember, agnt.org. So there are a number of things that you can look at there that you can download related to their daily affirmations, quotations that they routinely bring in, practices that are suggested by a variety of contributors, and reflections on those who have been through Season for Nonviolence before and recognize its value as our lives unfold. So the Season for Nonviolence foundational program, 64 Ways in 64 Days, provides just so many ways for individuals to practice nonviolence through the season and beyond. Here you can find materials from them for teens, for children, for group activities, for public service projects, for formatted booklets, and the mandala meditation tool as well. So these are things that you can do, that I can do. These are choices that we can make, conscious choices we can take to do more in our lives than sitting around wondering why life isn't treating us better. Principle's a simple one. There is an unlimited power in the universe, and each of us is using it all the time. So why not use it by choosing to live our lives fully and consciously, by learning all that we can learn about how the universe can and will support us in that. Maybe it's time for you to take a risk, go out on a limb, expose yourself to something new and different. There's a story about a monastery in Europe which is perched high on a cliff several hundred feet above the valley below. And the only way to reach that monastery is to be suspended in a basket, which is then pulled to the top of the cliff by several monks pulling and tugging with all their strength. Now, obviously, that ride up the steep cliff can be pretty intimidating. One tourist in particular got exceedingly nervous, and as he was about halfway up, when he noticed that the rope by which they were suspended was old and frayed. With a trembling voice, he asked the monk who was riding with him in the basket how often they changed the rope. The monk thought for a moment, and then he answered with just a hint of a smile, "Whenever it breaks." I think the choices we offer you here are much less risky than that. One rope only on that basket, and it only gets replaced when it breaks. But the truth is, as Dr. Holmes describes it so aptly in The Science of Mind, the truth is that the principle of life makes itself available to each of us all of the time. That connection never breaks. The rest is up to us. So, yes, indeed, each one of us is in our own driver's seat. Each of us can have the realization that God is all there is, and we're it. We're not like the three guys in this story. You're probably praying this is the last story of the day. But this is a story about three engineers riding together in a car. One is an electrical engineer, one is a chemical engineer, and the third is a Microsoft engineer. So as they're driving along, the car suddenly dies and stops right in the middle of the road. The three engineers look at each other blankly, each one wondering, what could have gone wrong? The electrical engineer, who knows practically nothing about cars, suggests stripping the car down until they get to the electronics of the car, and then trying to trace where a fault might have occurred. Then the Microsoft engineer, who really knows nothing about cars, comes up with this suggestion. Why don't we, he says, get out, get back in, open the windows again, and then close them, and see if that'll make it work. You know, it's kind of like turn your computer off, let it sit for 10 minutes, turn it back on, crank it up, and see if it works now. Like the old saying goes, let's try the third guy in the car. This is the chemical engineer, who also knows nothing about cars, suggests that maybe the fuel has become emulsified and is getting blocked somewhere. No fix it, just what's wrong. But like the old saying goes, if you don't know where you're going, any path will do, right? So as we take time to learn our craft, metaphysics, we come to know the laws of the universe are to be trusted. However, we must come to understand them before we can trust them and use them. Once understood, any law is available and is impersonally responsive to everyone. So climbing in the driver's seat requires preparation, whether it's a car, a bicycle, a bus, an airplane, or the days of your life. Each of us is here on purpose, but your purpose is revealed to you when you are demonstrating your faith, your trust, and your awareness through your actions. And the way that each of us can do that, demonstrate faith, trust, and awareness, is to open ourselves to that subtle energy of spirit to allow it to evolve through us. How much of that infinite energy of good is yours? The answer is all of it. The answer is, how much of it may you have to use? And of course you know that it's as much as you can embody in the driver's seat of your life. And so it is.